The thunder cracked across the Montana sky as Josephine Newell stumbled toward the only light she could see for miles, her swollen belly heavy beneath her tattered dress, rain soaking through to her skin in the frigid October night of 1873. Her trembling fingers clutched a small bag of belongings, all that remained of her former life in St. Louis, as she approached the weathered cabin nestled against the foothills of the Bitterroot Mountains. The rain intensified, pelting her face and blurring her vision as she reached the porch. She could barely make out the silhouette of a man standing in the doorway, his frame tall and imposing against the warm glow behind him. Josephine's knees nearly buckled as another contraction gripped her, more powerful than the last. "Please," she gasped, looking up at the stranger, water streaming down her face, indistinguishable from her tears. "Don't turn me away." Her voice broke as she clutched her stomach. "I have nowhere else to go." The man hesitated only briefly before stepping aside, opening his door wide. "Come in, madam," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "No one should be out in this weather, least of all someone in your condition." As Josephine crossed the threshold into the warmth of the cabin, the stranger moved quickly to stoke the fire. She caught a better glimpse of him now, tall and broad-shouldered, with sandy brown hair and a neatly trimmed beard that couldn't hide the weathered lines around his eyes. He wasn't much older than her 22 years, but his eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen much more of life than his age suggested. "Name's August Lawson," he said, turning back to her as he pulled a chair close to the fire. "Sit here, you're soaked through." Josephine sank gratefully into the chair, her legs nearly giving out beneath her. "Josephine Newell," she managed, wincing as another contraction rippled through her. "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Lawson." August moved efficiently around the small cabin, gathering blankets and setting water to boil. "When's the baby due?" he asked, handing her a rough but clean towel. "Soon," she whispered, her hands trembling as she accepted it. "Very soon, I fear." August's eyes widened slightly, but he maintained his composure. "I'll ride for the midwife at first light if the storm's cleared. For now, you need dry clothes and rest." He reached into a trunk and pulled out a large flannel shirt. "This is all I have that might fit over." He gestured vaguely toward her belly. Josephine nodded gratefully. "You're very kind to a stranger." "Folks help each other out here," he replied simply. "The territory doesn't forgive those who turn their backs on others in need." He turned away discreetly. "Change by the fire." "I'll make some coffee." As Josephine struggled out of her wet clothes and into the oversized shirt, she studied the cabin. It was simple but well-maintained, a single room with a sturdy bed in one corner, a table with 2 chairs, and a small kitchen area. Rifles hung on the wall alongside a few tools. It was a bachelor's home, but one kept with unexpected care. "Mr. Lawson," she said softly as he returned with a steaming mug. "I should tell you, I'm not married." August paused, his expression unreadable in the flickering firelight. "That's not for me to judge, Miss Newell, my fiancée." She swallowed hard. "He abandoned me when he learned of the child. I was working as a seamstress in St. Louis, but once my condition became apparent, I lost my position. I was heading to my cousin in Helena when the stagecoach was robbed 3 days ago." Her voice wavered. "They took everything of value but left the passengers unharmed. The driver said the next town was just 5 miles east, but I must have taken a wrong turn." August nodded gravely. "MacGregor's Crossing is about 10 miles east. You're lucky you found my place." He hesitated. "There's not much out here except my ranch and a few scattered homesteads." Another contraction seized her, stronger than before, forcing a gasp from her lips. August set down the coffee and moved quickly to her side. "How close are they coming?" he asked, his voice calm despite the concern in his eyes. "Closer each time," she whispered, fear evident in her voice. "I don't think we'll be waiting for that midwife." August ran a hand through his hair, briefly revealing a scar that ran along his temple. "I've delivered foals and calves, but never." He squared his shoulders. "I'll do what I can to help, Miss Newell." Through the night, the storm raged outside while Josephine's labor intensified within. August proved himself to be steady and resourceful, heating water, preparing clean linens, and offering whatever comfort he could provide to the suffering woman who had appeared so unexpectedly at his door. Near dawn, As the first hints of light crept through the cabin windows, Josephine's daughter entered the world with a robust cry that seemed to echo the ferocity of the storm that had finally begun to abate. August carefully cleaned the tiny, red-faced infant and wrapped her in a soft blanket before placing her in Josephine's trembling arms. "She's perfect," Josephine whispered, tears streaming down her face as she gazed at her daughter's tiny features. August smiled, genuine warmth breaking through his typically reserved expression. "She's strong like her mother." "I don't feel very strong," Josephine admitted, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. "You rode out here alone in your condition through Montana territory. You survived a robbery and made it through a blizzard, and then you brought this little one into the world." August's voice was soft but firm. "I'd say that takes more strength than most men I know possess." Josephine looked up at him, seeing this stranger, this unexpected savior, in a new light. His hands, rough from ranch work, had been surprisingly gentle throughout her ordeal. His eyes, though guarded, held kindness she hadn't dared hope to find. "What will you name her?" August asked, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. Josephine gazed down at her daughter's tiny face. "Emma," she decided. "Emma Rose Newell." August nodded approvingly. "A good name, strong and sweet at once." He stood, stretching his tall frame. "You both need rest. Take the bed. I'll make up a pallet for myself." "Mr. Lawson, I've imposed enough. I couldn't—" "It's not an imposition," he interrupted gently. "And please call me August. I reckon we're past formalities after the night we've had." The following days established a tentative routine. August rode to MacGregor's Crossing for supplies and to send a telegram to Josephine's cousin in Helena. When he returned, he brought disappointing news. "Your cousin and her husband moved on to Oregon Territory 3 months ago," he explained, unpacking supplies. The telegram office had no forwarding address. Josephine sat at the table, Emma sleeping peacefully in a makeshift cradle August had fashioned from a dresser drawer. "I see," she said quietly, her heart sinking. "Then I must find work in town as soon as I'm able." August hesitated, his hand stilling on a package of coffee. "The town's not much. A general store, saloon, telegraph office, and a few houses. Not many opportunities for a woman alone with a child." "I have no choice," Josephine replied, trying to keep the desperation from her voice. "I cannot impose on your kindness indefinitely." August turned to face her fully. "Winter's coming fast. You can see it in the sky. In another week the passes might be closed until spring." He spoke carefully, as if measuring each word. "My offer is this: stay through the winter. Help with what you can around the cabin. By spring you'll have your strength back. Emma will be stronger for traveling, and I can take you both to Helena if that's still your wish." Josephine studied his face, searching for hidden motives, but found only straightforward concern. "That's a generous offer." "It's a practical one," he countered. "I've been alone out here for 3 years. Having someone to talk to besides my horse makes a welcome change." A smile tugged at Josephine's lips. "Is your horse not a good conversationalist?" "Terrible," August replied, the hint of a smile lightening his typically serious expression. "Always changing the subject to oats and sugar cubes." That small moment of levity cemented Josephine's decision. "Then we accept your offer with gratitude." As October gave way to November, and November to December, the cabin that had once been a bachelor's refuge transformed. Josephine, regaining her strength, brought small touches that made the space more homelike. Wildflowers gathered before the first snow arranged in a jar on the table. Curtains fashioned from spare fabric August had purchased in town. And most notably, the constant presence of Emma, whose coos and cries filled the once silent space with life. August's ranch work continued despite the snow, checking fences, caring for his small herd of cattle, and repairing equipment in preparation for spring. Each evening, he returned to find a warm meal waiting and Josephine eager to hear about his day. It was a domestic arrangement neither had anticipated, but which brought unexpected comfort to them both. On a particularly cold evening in early January, as wind howled around the cabin corners, August returned from the barn with an armful of firewood to find Josephine singing softly to Emma, her voice sweet and clear in the lamplight. "That's beautiful," he said quietly, setting down the wood. What song is it? Josephine looked up, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. Just a lullaby my mother sang to me. Emma seems to like it. August nodded, watching as the baby's eyes drifted closed. My mother used to sing too, haven't thought about that in years. Tell me about your family, Josephine ventured, carefully placing the sleeping Emma in her cradle. You know all about my unfortunate circumstances, but you've shared little of yourself. August was silent for so long that Josephine thought he might not answer. Finally, he sat in his chair by the fire and spoke, his voice low. Not much to tell. Grew up in Pennsylvania. Father was a blacksmith. Mother died when I was 12. When the war came, my father and older brother enlisted with the Union. Neither came home. His fingers absently traced the scar at his temple. I took a bullet at Gettysburg. After the war, there wasn't much left for me back east. Came west in '66, worked cattle drives until I saved enough for this place. You've been alone all this time? Josephine asked softly. August's gaze remained fixed on the fire. Better that way, less complicated. And yet you opened your door to a complicated situation the night Emma and I arrived, she observed. His eyes finally met hers. Some decisions aren't about what's easiest, they're about what's right. Josephine held his gaze. Thank you for doing what was right, August. I don't know what would have become of us otherwise. Something shifted between them that night, a deepening of understanding, a tentative bridge across the careful distance they had maintained. In the days that followed, August began to linger longer at meals, sharing stories of his cattle drives and the characters he'd met on the frontier. Josephine, in turn, told him of her childhood in Missouri, her dreams of becoming a teacher before circumstances forced her to seek work as a seamstress instead. One afternoon in early February, August returned from checking fence lines to find Josephine mending one of his shirts, her nimble fingers working the needle with practiced skill. You're good at that, he observed, hanging his coat by the door. Josephine smiled. I should hope so. I was the finest seamstress at Mrs. Holloway's shop in St. Louis before. She trailed off, her smile fading. August sat across from her. Before what happened with Emma's father? He asked gently. Josephine nodded, her needle stilling. James was a banker's son. He made many promises. When I told him about the baby, he accused me of trying to trap him into marriage, said he couldn't be certain it was even his. Her voice hardened. It was. There was never anyone else. He was a fool, August said simply. Josephine looked up, surprised by the vehemence in his tone. A man who runs from his responsibilities isn't worth the ground he walks on, August continued. Emma deserves better. Yes, Josephine agreed softly. She does. August cleared his throat, seemingly uncomfortable with the intensity of the moment. I was thinking, he said, changing the subject. Come spring, I'll need to increase my herd. Been saving to buy more cattle at the spring auction in Helena. Will you be gone long? Josephine asked, trying to ignore the twist of disappointment in her stomach at the thought of his absence. About a week, he replied. But that's not what I wanted to discuss. I was wondering if you and Emma might want to come along, see Helena, perhaps find work there if that's still your plan. Josephine's hands stilled in her lap. Is that what you want, for us to find a place in Helena? August met her gaze steadily. I want you to have choices, Josephine, not just accepting the first offer because it's your only option. And if Helena isn't what I choose, she asked, her heart beating faster, August's expression remained carefully neutral. Then you'd be welcome to return here. The cabin's bigger with 2 rooms than it looks from outside. I've been meaning to build a proper extension come spring. The implication hung in the air between them, not quite an offer of permanence, but the possibility of one. Josephine felt her cheeks warm under his steady gaze. That's very thoughtful, she managed. We'll see what spring brings. February brought a brief thaw, allowing August to venture into town for mail and supplies. He returned with unexpected news. The sheriff asked about you, he said as he unpacked his saddlebags. Seems someone's been asking after a young woman matching your description. A man from St. Louis. Josephine froze, her face draining of color. What did you tell him? Nothing, August replied firmly. Just that I hadn't seen any strangers before the passes closed. Sheriff didn't press. He knows me well enough. It must be James, Josephine whispered, instinctively moving toward Emma's cradle. But why would he come looking for me now? He made his feelings quite clear. August's expression darkened. Men like that often want what they've thrown away when someone else might have it. No one else has me, Josephine said softly. August's eyes met hers across the room. He doesn't know that. The unspoken current between them intensified in the following days. August began taking Josephine with him on short rides around the property when weather permitted, showing her the boundaries of his modest ranch and sharing his dreams of expanding it someday. Emma, now nearly 4 months old, thrived under their care, her personality emerging with each passing day. One evening, as they sat before the fire after Emma had been put to bed, August broke their comfortable silence. "Why did you keep heading west after the stagecoach robbery?" he asked. Most folks would have turned back to the nearest town. Josephine considered the question. "I couldn't go back to St. Louis, and I had so little money left that I feared being stranded in some small town with no prospects. My cousin was my only hope," she sighed. "It wasn't a good plan, but desperation doesn't always allow for good plans." August nodded thoughtfully. "Desperation brought me west too, in a way. After the war, everything back home reminded me of what I'd lost. I needed open country and a fresh start." "Have you found it, your fresh start?" Josephine asked. August's gaze lingered on her face. "I'm beginning to think I have." The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken feelings, until Emma's soft cry from her cradle broke the spell. Josephine rose quickly to attend to her daughter, her heart racing from more than just maternal concern. March arrived with warmer days and melting snow. August spent long hours outside, preparing fields and repairing winter damage to fences and outbuildings. Josephine often worked alongside him when Emma was napping, surprising him with her willingness to tackle difficult tasks. "You don't have to help with the heavy work," he told her one afternoon as she helped him mend a section of fence. "I want to," she replied simply. "You've done so much for us. Besides, I enjoy being useful." August studied her for a moment. "You're more than useful, Josephine. You've brought life back to this place. Before you came, it was just somewhere I slept between work days. Now it's a home," she suggested when he hesitated. "Yes," he agreed, his voice soft. "A home." That evening after dinner, August announced his plans to ride into town the next day. "We're getting low on supplies, and I should check if there's any mail. Weather's clearing enough that the post might be getting through again." Josephine nodded, trying to ignore the flutter of anxiety that accompanied any mention of town now. "Will you be gone long?" "Just the day," he assured her. "I'll be back by sundown." But when sundown came the following day with no sign of August, Josephine began to worry. She put Emma to bed and kept watch by the window, jumping at every sound that might herald his return. When the cabin door finally opened well after midnight, her relief quickly turned to alarm. August stumbled in, his face bruised and bloody, one arm held protectively against his ribs. "What happened?" she gasped, rushing to help him to a chair. "Had some unwelcome company in town," he managed, wincing as he sat. "3 men. One asking questions about a woman with a baby. When I wouldn't answer, they decided to make their point more forcefully." Josephine's hands trembled as she gathered water and clean cloths. "James," she whispered. "It must be, but why would he bring others?" "He didn't," August replied grimly. "He was the well-dressed one. The others were hired muscle. Sheriff was out of town, tracking some horse thieves." As she gently cleaned the cut above his eye, Josephine fought back tears. "This is my fault. I've brought nothing but trouble to your door." August caught her wrist, his grip gentle but firm. "Don't say that, not ever." His eyes, though pained, held unwavering conviction. "You and Emma are the best thing that's happened to me in more years than I care to count." Josephine stilled, her heart pounding. "August, let me finish," he said softly. "I've been alone a long time, convinced myself that's how it should be. Then you showed up that night and everything changed. I don't want you to go to Helena unless it's what you truly want. I want you to stay." "Both of you?" "As what?" Josephine whispered. "Your housekeeper, your friend." August's hand moved to cup her cheek. "As my wife, if you'll have me. I know it's sudden, and I'm not a man of fancy words, but I love you, Josephine. I think I have since that first night, watching you bring Emma into the world with more courage than I've seen in any battlefield." Tears spilled down Josephine's cheeks as she covered his hand with her own. "It's not sudden at all," she said softly. It's been building every day in every small kindness, every shared moment. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead gently to his. I love you too, August. We would be honored to be your family. Their first kiss was tender, mindful of his injuries but filled with the promise of deeper passion to come. When they finally parted, August's expression turned serious again. James will be back, he said. Men like him don't give up easily. Why now? Josephine wondered. After all this time. The sheriff mentioned something before he left town. Seems your former fiancé's father passed recently. Left everything to his only son, with the condition that he marry and produce an heir within the year. August's mouth twisted in disgust. Suddenly, a ready-made child becomes convenient. Josephine's arms instinctively tightened around August. He can't have her. Emma is my daughter, not his bargaining chip. Our daughter, August corrected gently. If you'll marry me, I'll adopt her legally. No one will take her from us. The following morning, they rode into town together, Emma securely bundled against Josephine's chest. The town's only church was a simple wooden structure, but its minister was happy to perform a wedding ceremony on short notice, especially after August quietly explained the circumstances. As they exchanged vows before the small altar, Josephine felt a sense of rightness that had eluded her throughout her previous engagement. August's hands were steady as he placed a simple gold band on her finger, a family heirloom he'd kept from his mother, the only valuable he hadn't sold during his early struggling years in the West. Their brief moment of happiness was interrupted as they exited the church. James Thornton stood waiting with his two companions, his handsome face twisted in an unpleasant smile. Josephine, he called, stepping forward. How convenient to find you here, and with my child, I see. August moved protectively in front of his new wife and daughter. You're mistaken, sir. That's my daughter you're referring to, James laughed coldly. A hasty wedding won't change the facts. That child is a Thornton by blood, and I've come to claim what's mine. You claimed nothing when you turned me away, Josephine said, her voice stronger than she felt. You called me a liar and worse. You said you wanted nothing to do with my child. Circumstances change, James replied smoothly. I'm prepared to be generous. Come back to St. Louis with me, and I'll forget this unfortunate detour in your life. The lady has made her choice, August said firmly. I suggest you respect it, James signaled to his companions, who moved forward menacingly. I didn't come all this way to leave empty-handed. Before the situation could escalate further, the town sheriff appeared, returning from his pursuit of the horse thieves. What's the trouble here? He called, dismounting swiftly. No trouble at all, Sheriff, August replied, not taking his eyes off James. This gentleman was just leaving. James's jaw tightened as he assessed the changed situation. This isn't over, he warned. I have resources you can't imagine. I'll have lawyers here within the month. You do that, August replied calmly. But know this, in Montana territory, a man who abandons his child has no legal claim to suddenly assert paternity when it becomes convenient, especially against a legal adoption. James's face flushed with anger, but with the sheriff watching closely, he had little choice but to retreat. This isn't the last you'll hear from me, he warned as he backed away. Actually, I believe it is, came a new voice. They turned to see the telegraph operator approaching with a paper in hand. Just received this from St. Louis. Thought you should see it, Sheriff. The sheriff read the telegram, his eyebrows rising. Well, Mr. Thornton, seems you've got bigger problems than a custody dispute. This says you're wanted for embezzlement from your father's bank. Apparently, the estate wasn't as solvent as expected after his death. James's face went pale. That's ridiculous. I'm the heir to a mountain of debt, according to this, the sheriff continued. And suspicion that you helped create it. They're asking me to detain you until a marshal can arrive. As the sheriff took a stunned James into custody, August turned to Josephine, wrapping a protective arm around her and Emma. Let's go home, he said softly. Our home. Spring bloomed across the Montana landscape, transforming the valley where August's ranch nestled into a green haven. With James awaiting trial back in St. Louis, the threat to their newfound happiness had been removed, allowing the young family to focus on building their life together. August had made good on his promise to expand the cabin, adding a proper bedroom for Emma and improving the main living space. Josephine's skilled hands had transformed the interior, making it warm and inviting. Her garden thrived behind the house, providing fresh vegetables and herbs that supplemented their meals. On a perfect June evening, as the sun cast golden light across the distant mountains, August and Josephine sat on the porch of their home, watching Emma take tentative steps across the grass, her face alight with accomplishment. "I never imagined this," Josephine said softly, leaning against her husband's shoulder. "That night in the storm, I was just praying for shelter until morning. I never dreamed I'd find a home, a husband, a father for my child." August pressed a kiss to her temple. "And I never imagined that opening my door that night would change everything." His hand rested gently on her stomach, where the first signs of their second child had begun to show. "Best decision I ever made." Emma toddled toward them, her arms outstretched, a smile lighting her face. August scooped her up, settling her between them. "Do you ever regret it?" Josephine asked. Taking in a desperate woman and her unborn child, all the complications that followed, August shook his head, his arm tightening around his family. "Not for a single moment. Some doors, once opened, lead exactly where you're meant to be." As the sun sank lower, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, the little family remained on the porch, content in the knowledge that sometimes the greatest journeys begin with a plea for shelter and the courage to open a door wide.